Now, certain key details from the recently signed agreements between Israel and the UAE are still vague. CEO of the International Legal Forum and Sharaka NGO board member Arsen Ostrovsky joining us with more. Arsen, thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you.
All right, so first of all, what do we know for certain about these economic deals, what they include, what they exclude, and who will benefit most from them?
Well, to answer the second part of your question, who will benefit most, I think that's the people of Israel and the UAE, the clear winners of this. Normally with a peace deal such as this, we see advancement in incremental stages, but really after the signing of the accords, the advancement between the Israel and the Gulf states, including the UAE, has really been at turbo pace. And we've seen agreements, including on this most recent visit and the first visit by Foreign Minister Lapid across a whole range of fields, from investment, from trade, from tourism and travel, to COVID research, to cultural ties and academics. So it's really been, quite frankly, across the board. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow, so we're likely to see a lot more of these deals, I hope. And I think Lapid mentioned that more on the way.
Yeah.
But he also indicated that the new Democratic administration in the United States is backing these deals, but not at the expense of the Palestinians. That's apparently the voice from the Biden administration. What do you think Lapid means by this? What parts of these agreements have so far been interpreted as possibly at the Palestinians' expense?
I think the Foreign Minister Lapid made it very clear in that the countries from the Gulf, including the UAE, can and should play a very constructive role in the peace process between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but that the Palestinians must first want to help and first want to advance the peace process themselves in order for other countries, including the UAE, to have a meaningful say, which they very much want to and can, but it really ultimately depends on the Palestinians and the Palestinian leadership as to whether they want to see peace advanced.
But so again, going back to Israel and maybe leaving the Palestinian Authority so-called as a third party to this, what deals between Israel and the UAE could be interpreted as being struck at the Palestinians' expense? Or is it really the deal in and of itself?
Look, in truth, none of these deals between Israel and the UAE are at the Palestinians' expense. And ultimately, I think to have a stronger region, a more prosperous region, is in the Palestinians' interest as well. And for them to want to be at the table and to have such deals as well themselves. So I don't think any of these deals are at the detriment of the Palestinian people. Ultimately, they're first and foremost bilateral deals between us and the UAE people, but hopefully the Palestinians, should they want to see advancement in these areas, will come to the table and negotiate a true and sincere peace with the Israelis as well.
All right, so now I know you mentioned that there will be likely many more negotiations on more deals, more memorandum of understanding, et cetera. Are there any clues so far as to what some of those deals might entail?
I mean, look, I think it's really an open slate. I think the bilateral trade between Israel and the UAE, as it stands at the moment, is roughly about 700 million US, but that's nothing. That's just the tip of the iceberg as to what is actually possible. And remember, in the last year, we've also been somewhat constrained by COVID restrictions, and nonetheless, we have seen these incredible deals really advancing at this enormous pace, and with the countries hopefully opening up even further with bilateral trade and tourism and travel and delegations. I'm certain that we'll only see this go one way, and that's up.
All right, well, we know that this inauguration of all these embassies and this visit in and of itself were also after having been postponed several times. So like you said, I'm sure a lot more is going to come on the way now that COVID is getting a little bit better, I should say. Arsen Ostrovsky, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.